So 2 things you will have heard recently. PvE is cancelled, Overwatch is dead. We'll talk about the PvE is cancelled in a minute. First thing is Overwatch dead? The answer is no, it's not dead, but it will forever be mediocre in all likelihood. Now you can pick your poison of which you think is worse. But here's why Overwatch is not dead. It will still have plenty of seasonal releases. And I think people will need to understand that the best way to consume Overwatch going forwards is seasonal releases. That is to say, once every month, once every 2 months, they'll drop some stuff, whether that's Star Wars, or whether it's some PvE, or, you know, they'll drop a hero every now and then, or a map every now and then. You log in, play that new thing, pay for the battle pass, you buy a skin or 2, and that is the model. It's not really going to be a model where you're going to play all the time. I think it would be better to describe Overwatch not as a live service game, but as a seasonal monetized game. The reason the game will always be mediocre, because the thing is, Overwatch is an amazing franchise. 50 million plus copies sold when it was Overwatch 1. It's an amazing franchise with amazing characters and an amazing feel to the game. Problem is, the core gameplay loop is never satisfied. Now, having played some other games in my time away from Overwatch, I think I've seen even more clearly now what that means. When you play Apex Legends, you get to experience the core gameplay loop. What I mean by the core gameplay loop is, in Apex Legends, you drop, you loot, you shoot, you kill stuff, one team is left as the champion, there's a ring, the ring closes, you know, the pressure is there, and eventually one team comes out on top. Even if the developers make bad decisions, as they have done with the rank system that's currently in place in Apex Legends, which is easily one of the worst I've seen in a while, even when that's the case, your core gameplay loop goes uninterrupted. You get to do what the game promises it's about regardless, right? Yeah, okay, some things can go wrong and maybe ratting is more incentivized now than other, but you still get that core gameplay loop. Same thing in Valorant, in CSGO, in MOBA games. Bad decisions can be made by the developers, but you get to do what the game says you're supposed to do. All of that never goes away. Problem with Overwatch, the core gameplay loop is only ever one bad balance patch, or in truth, just one hard counter swap away from you losing the gameplay loop. Firstly, the gameplay loop is very different from character to character in Overwatch, right? So the gameplay loop of a Winston is very different to the gameplay loop of Widowmaker. As a Winston, your gameplay loop is, I'm gonna jump, bubble, tase. I'm there to make space for my team. I know that if I mess up one of these cooldowns, I will die. Basically, you know that, and so that's your timer, and that's what you're gonna do. With Widowmaker, again, the gameplay loop is a lot different. It's just, I'm a sniper character, I'm gonna sit in Narnia and I'm gonna shoot these guys click heads. But the problem for both those characters and any character is that you're only ever a bad matchup, a bad hero swap, or a bad meta state away from losing the core gameplay loop. If you're Winston and you're playing well for the first couple fights, all it takes is for the enemy team to run back into spawn and switch to all your hard counters, and now you have to switch, or your entire gameplay loop just goes away, right? If they go like Diva, Reaper, Brig, Zen, Torb, or whatever, and they just decide they're gonna screw you, that's it. Like, either you just gotta like stop playing the game basically and just AFK on Winston, at which point why bother playing Winston, or you gotta swap, and now your gameplay loop has to be something else, something you didn't necessarily sign on to play, right? You booted up Overwatch because you wanted to play your favorite character, and there's too many things that will interrupt that loop. Same for like Widowmaker. Obviously, there's a lot of frustration with Widowmaker, myself included. But, you know, let's say that it's a map that doesn't favor you as Widowmaker, or they pick a hard dive and they keep diving you and your team doesn't help. You can't keep doing what you want to do. The gameplay loop is interrupted. Now, to some extent, that's okay. Like, you know, we want some element of like, okay, well, they're doing this, I can do this. The problem is how easy that gameplay loop is interrupted by the opponent for very little input. So for someone to beat you, let's say you're playing amazingly as Reinhardt, right? You're playing really tactically and spot on. It's very easy for the opponent to run back into spawn and pick Orisa, and for much less input, they get to interrupt your gameplay. Same idea for any like these hard counters, right? They don't really have to do much beyond that point. They don't have to execute. It would be one thing if the matchup was still a skill matchup, right? So let's say I'm playing Tracer, he wants to go Genji to counter me. We still have to fight each other, we still have to duel each other. It's still like, you know, 50-50, 60-40. There's still an engaging element here. That player's skill is still being challenged. The problem with Overwatch is it's not that at all. It's basically like 80-20. You know, they pick the hard counter to your hero, and there's basically very little. You have to be twice as good as the other person to maybe beat them, right? If it's like they're running Brig and you're running Genji, now you have to be like twice as good, you know, whatever it is. I don't have the exact specific examples at every point, but you get the idea. The counters exist in a way that require far less input than what they are countering, and the ability to swap to them at any point in the game is obnoxious and bad, and I think will fundamentally continue to break Overwatch as long as both those things exist. As long as a hero counters another hero, which I think is bad, and then the fact that as long as you can swap to that counter at any moment in time is bad. And both those things combined mean that you're only, again, either 1 or 2 hard counter swaps away, or again, a very bad meta state where your character is just awful. You know, like your character is just the Symmetra of Overwatch, and you just, you know, there's very few places where this character is really good or whatever it is. That is why people will like chime in and play Overwatch for a little bit, but they will always fundamentally end up being unsatisfied and leave, because whatever they think they signed up to play Overwatch for will almost certainly be taken away from them. Whatever hero it was that they gravitated towards, whatever playstyle it was that they liked, whether they liked playing dive, or they liked playing goats, or they liked playing whatever, it's not long before that thing will get taken away from them. Whatever that you're good at, you're almost punished every time you're good, because the better you are, the more of an impact you're having in the lobby, the more likelihood it is that the enemy team is incentivized to go and swap to a comp that makes your life miserable, right? That they're gonna make your gameplay experience shit. You play video games to test your skills against an opponent, right? Or less online multiplayer video games. You play them to test your skills against an opponent, to say, okay, well, if we're playing Valorant, if we're playing Apex, I'm gonna test my ability to like run and shoot and tactically smoke and flash, whatever, versus your abilities to do the same. Problem is, I mean, it's a great thing about Overwatch that those skill sets are very different, right? The skill sets of Winston are very different to the skill sets of Widowmaker. But even then, beyond that, you're not really testing skills against each other. You're not like, okay, well, if I'm Widowmaker and he's Winston, I'm testing my ability to aim and position versus his ability to be tactical and smart. It's usually just like, I picked Winston, and now they pick D.Va, and now I'm testing my ability to stay sane as they all try to screw me, and he chases me around the map because his hero beats my hero. So there's those 2 key problems. I think these are fundamental problems that, if not solved, will continue to plague Overwatch and will continue to make it unfun. And the reason why everyone has taken the PvE news so badly, why so much of the community is so upset, why content creators are leaving, why clickbait articles and clickbait YouTube videos are aplenty, is because whether they realize it or not, everyone was hoping to play Overwatch in a way that wasn't Overwatch. As I said before, people love the world of Overwatch, right? The characters have taken the gaming world and even the wider world by storm when they released, and they're just way better. Like, to be blunt, they're just way more fleshed out, they're way more dynamic, they're way more three-dimensional than characters in almost any other multiplayer video game that I can think of. The world is bright, the game looks fun, and the polish of the game is very strong, until perhaps recently. The problem is when all those things are great, except when you actually play the game. When you play the game, you lose all of that. So what everyone has been looking for is to experience the world of Overwatch without actually playing Overwatch. So when the PvE was announced, everyone was hoping that they'd be able to play this radically different version where they get to live with the characters, they get to inhabit that story world, they get to have their Overwatch experience without the multiplayer objective-based game that we currently have to play. So now that it's been confirmed that the PvE is not going to be this replayable thing, you'll get to play for a few hours, right? You get to play for a few hours every season or every other season, whatever it is, how much ever content they release at whatever cadence. You'll get to play it, but you won't get to replay it. And that's what people were sad about, because they were hoping to essentially get a new game, but within the Overwatch universe. They liked Overwatch, and they wanted to spend their time playing it. They wanted to spend all their time playing it, but no one can stay sane and keep bearing playing the current version of Overwatch. And that's nothing even, like I said, I don't think it's to do with like 5v5 versus 6v6 or anything like that. I do genuinely believe it fundamentally comes down to the 2 things I spoke about: hard counters and the option to always swap to a hard counter at any point in the game. I won't get into a whole thing because it's a whole thing about open queue, and I think counter swapping made more sense in open queue. It doesn't make sense in role queue. I think that essentially summarizes my feelings on why Overwatch will probably forever be mediocre. Now, there is a chance that they release an amazing balance patch or an amazing set of balance patches, an amazing set of hero releases that keeps hitting the nail on the head and keeps bringing players back and keeping them satisfied. Again, Apex Legends had a really bad down moment, and then after multiple subsequent good decisions, it became a popular game again and has stayed popular, no matter whatever grievances people may still have with the game right now. So Overwatch could have hit after hit after hit, but A, I don't think it would still address those fundamental issues, but I also just don't have faith anymore. I just don't have faith the developers can steer the ship that way, and I look forward to them proving me wrong and steering the ship right. But I genuinely believe, like I said earlier, it is a game meant to be consumed seasonally, and I think that's how the devs see it. I don't think their priority at all is to get you to be playing the game all the time. I think all they're looking for is that you log on once a month, once every other month, buy the skins, buy the battle pass, and then beyond that, we don't really care. Obviously, when I say don't really care, I mean, yeah, of course, they'd love for you to play all the time, but it's not their priority. It's not really what they're seeking. The live service model is just about like creating fun moments to keep you coming back, not necessarily to keep you playing, if that makes sense. The priority is, oh, that's a cool new thing, not this is a great fundamental experience. Against the core experience, the core gameplay loop is not there, and that's what I think will continue to play Overwatch. Your amount of time playing the game is not necessarily correlated with how often you buy skins, because people grind this game all the time and never buy skins, and ironically the casual audience who only pop in every now and then, they will still frequently buy skins even if they don't play that much because it's fun. So you create the moments, you bring people back, they buy your stuff, happy days. I think that's how Overwatch will proceed for a few years. It's unfortunately a very short-term mentality. Eventually it will run out of steam. Eventually people will stop coming back because they'll keep being bored, and the other potential threat is that any moment in time a competitor can create a much better all-round experience and completely drive Overwatch out of the market. Right now, there hasn't been that explosion, but let's say a new game drops that captures everyone's attention, you know, that threatens to basically kill Overwatch off at any moment in time. So I think it is a very short-term strategy, but it's a strategy that makes money, and that's what businesses like. They like making money, and they like making money right now. They don't care about necessarily 3 years from now. They care about right now, the next quarter, the next 12 months, 6 months. So it will make money. It will chug along for a while, and then I think in a couple years, you're going to see them start to wind down. Probably like this carries on for a couple years, like maybe 1 to 2 years. Then they'll realize that the profits aren't high as they would like. They'll start to scale back slowly. Okay, well, instead of 4 heroes a year or 3 heroes a year, whatever, it'll be like 1 hero a year, 2 hero a year. Until eventually it dwindles down. We go back to Overwatch 1 maintenance mode, right? Which is little amount of content, and mostly just a core community playing the game. We're trying to make their best out of it. And then eventually all the updates stop. The developers get moved on to something else, and we'll all look back fondly at what a great game Overwatch was and how much fun it could have been if it was managed better. I hope to be proven wrong. I hope that it defies expectations, that the PvE is amazing, that it's like mind-blowing, it rejuvenates the game. But those two fundamental problems that I talked about, I don't see the developers addressing. I don't think they're going to change it. I think their number one priority is the experience of the casual gamer who logs on once a month again. It's not about creating an experience that should satisfy the person who plays Overwatch every day and who wants to grind and be better. It's about satisfying the person who logs in and just wants the most comfortable experience possible for the 2 hours that they're playing it this week. And that, in their mind, that's like, oh, I need to be able to hero swap all the time and easily win for free. I need to be able to be a better player who spent more time in the game by easily swapping to a hard counter at any moment in time. Which again is very short term, because in the long term, the more you play, the more you're the one getting hard counter and you're the one whose fun is being sucked out. But again, that's not the priority. The priority is the guy who logs in occasionally, as long as they're having fun, enough to buy a skin, and enough to buy the battle pass. That is the moneymaker. That is their priority. And that's how it will go. End rant.